In this session, we're going to take a look at performance monitoring in EventSentry and how we can pull in data from an external source. That is data that's not available through Windows performance monitoring, so that's not exposed by a performance counter, and it's not available via SNMP. So when we use this is obvious. So if there is data that we want to graph, map, or alert on that's not available as a performance counter or is not available from an SNMP capable device, then we will want to go this route. An example would be data from a website. So let's say we have a website that shows us the temperature of a fridge, the temperature of a city, the pollution of a city, and so forth. Then we can write a script, for example, PowerShell, or just a plain old command line script, and get that information from that website and pull that data into EventSentry. And once we've done that, the data can be treated just like any other performance data we get from Windows, whether just like a CPU counter, for example. We can chart that information and we can get alerts. I have a couple of examples that I can show here, what type of data we can create and what that would look like. So if I'm here on the demo site of EventSentry, so that's demo.eventsentry.com, and we have a couple of dashboards here that utilize this functionality. The first one is EPA air quality. So this dashboard actually shows ozone levels, particle pollution, as well as the temperature of 4 different cities in the United States. And that data is being pulled in through EventSentry's performance monitoring. And then we have a few different ways of visualizing that data. We're also downloading the CO2 concentration in our atmosphere measured in ppm parts per million and displaying it here. And then we have another one called environment. Works similarly, but using different data. So this looks at 4 more or less extreme spots on our planet. Antarctica being very cold, Death Valley being very hot, Pakistan also being fairly hot, and then a city in Russia that's also somewhat cold. And we're measuring here the temperature, again, downloading the temperature, the humidity, the cloud coverage, and the wind. And again, visualizing that information in a variety of different ways on the dashboard, but we could also set up alerts. For example, we could get an alert by email if the temperature in Antarctica falls below, let's say, -50 Fahrenheit, or if the temperature in Death Valley is over 110 degrees. But those are just some examples. We can monitor really anything that you can essentially run a script on. And in this example, in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure how long it takes to download a test file. And I have the tab open here. I'm going to move this to the right here. That lets me download a variety of different files. And we're going to just go with a 200 meg file, which seems to take about 10 seconds or so on my system. I'm going to keep calling this every minute, and we're going to chart how long it takes. And the way we can do that is there's a command line script. There's ways to do this in PowerShell as well, but I'm opting for the easier route, which is a batch script that essentially times how long it takes to run a specific command. And all that script is going to do is it's going to output in seconds how long that script ran. So if the script ran 10 seconds, it will simply output 10 on the command line. So let's take a look how this looks like. So the command that would do this is called measure.cmd. So we can take a quick look at this. It's just a long CMD script that utilizes the time environment variable. We need an echo first. So it simply takes that time at the beginning and the end of the script and then calculates the difference and displays the difference in seconds. The EventSentry sysadmin tools contain a utility called getHTTP that will download a file from the command line. It's called getHTTP. The URL of the file is here. So if I do a right click here, say copy link, then I can simply paste that here. This is what that tool looks like if I just run it as is without passing it through that script that measures the time. So we can see that it takes, in this case, took about 27 seconds, so 27,000 milliseconds Now I'm going to pass this through our measure command. So I'm going to do the same thing. So to make this a little bit easier, I'm simply going to do this measure. I'm going to send this output nowhere so we don't have too much output, because we want to make sure that our script eventually will only return a number and nothing else. This is way too much output. It's going to be difficult for EventSentry to figure out, okay, what are we parsing here? So I'm going to redirect this to null, and basically the same thing is happening as before, except we don't actually see the output. And all we are going to see is a number with the number of seconds it took, so 22 seconds. So this is the command that we need to run here. And how are we going to do that in EventSentry? So let's get going into the management console. It's a system health feature, so of course we're creating a package. We're going to call it download speed. We're only going to run this from one computer. We could technically run this from different computers, but that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense unless they were in different subnets, right? Where there's a different internet connection. So I'm going to add the performance package here, hit the plus icon, and switch this to executable. The file, and we can actually use the browse button here too. Let's go to tools, measure.cmd. And I think I still have this in a clipboard. I'm going to have to, of course, remove the measure here. But otherwise, this would be about the same. And that's really all we need to do. And now we're going to, and this was a 200 megabyte file. So we'll call this counter download time 200 megabytes. Do not want to run this every 10 seconds because it takes 20 seconds usually to do this. So we're going to run this, let's just say every 5 minutes. But you know what, for our test here, we're going to make this a little bit less than that. We're going to make it every 2 minutes. We don't want an alert at this point. We are going to write it to the database, and let's see, we'll write it to the database every 6 minutes. We're going to add our primary database to that, and that's it. There are no prerequisites, of course, on this computer because everything is installed. So we have our get HTTP command installed here, and the other part is just a batch script. So I can go ahead, save and deploy this. We're doing this every 2 minutes. Now we're not going to see the data, of course, in the database until 6 minutes have passed. All right, so the first measurement is going to happen in 2 minutes, but it's going to take about 6 minutes before we're going to see data in the database. So I'm going to pause this video now. I'm going to fast forward to see what that looks like. So this has been running for a little while now. We're going to go into the web reports. That's really the only place we're going to be able to see if this has been working. Going to features, performance, and I'm going to go to the history. I want to see the raw data. We're going to restrict this to our host. This is where the package is assigned to. And we should now see this under names here. So this is where all the counters that we have running on our system. And I can see here download time 200 megabytes. So that's there. Number 10 indicates we have 10 values, so that's good. So I'm going to click that, go on detailed, and bingo. I'm going to expand this here. Technically, we don't really need this, but this would show the actual command that ran. Generally speaking, you know, we just need to see the name because that tells us really everything we need to know. But we can see here that it ran for about an hour every 6 minutes. And yeah, it's been recording the time it takes to download this file. It obviously varies a little bit. We can also chart this now. So if I go to features, performance, trends, let's pick the EventSentry server here. The download time should show up here as well. And we've got a summary view. I'm going to switch this to the last, well, let's say last hour. And here we have a visualization of these download times. And that's really how easy it was to pull in data from an external process take the output and just chart it. And now we could go ahead and say, all right, we want to know if that data, if that number is larger than, let's say, 30, right? And you could measure anything with this. You could measure the time it takes to copy a file to a file server, for example. You could measure how long it takes to download you in some corporate website or anything else you want to measure. There's also third-party tools that you can use to actually measure the general internet speed. To see how long it takes, to see what the bandwidth is, jitter, packet delay, and so forth. I could switch this, of course, to a different file. I could download a 500 megabyte file, a gig file, and so forth. And if you have the different locations, then you can assign this script to run on different subnets, for example, to see, what are the different times to upload or download a file, for example, to your file servers. This is a great way, for example, to just measure things that you can't automatically measure with something like Performance Monitor. So the options really are endless with this feature. Anything that you can essentially measure, you can pull into EventSentry. And pulling in data from an external application also supports instances. So if the script that you're calling reports multiple data points for different measurements. In this case, for example, let's say we're getting the speed for a 200 and a 500 megabyte file. Then you could do that all in one big swoop and use instances for that.